you so much for joining. Afternoon, everybody. I'm Matt Lewis. I'm the UK Director of Public Services here at Hayes Specialist Recruitment. So as your host, I'm delighted to welcome you all to our webinar today, and indeed welcome also to our fantastic panel of experts too, who I will introduce in a moment. But by way of a preamble, as you know, we're experiencing the most competitive market for talent attraction and retention in living memory. So today we're going to be discussing a wide range of topics to share insights and ideas that we hope you'll find useful in navigating the current market to successfully find and engage the talent you need. So we'll start with showing some insights into the recruitment landscape so we can understand what we're up against, and then we'll explore how we can get better at competing in the market, covering subjects from skills forecasting to candidate attraction techniques, employer value propositions, EDI and more as time allows. And if as a result of this call, you can improve even just one aspect of your hiring strategy, then it would have been a time well invested, an hour very well invested. So in a moment, I'll share some insights from the Hayes 2022 UK Salary and Recruiting Trends Report, as well as data from the Office of National Statistics, evidencing basically what you already know intuitively about how difficult the market can be, but it will inform our discussion with our panel of experts as we go on. We will, of course, open the floor to questions throughout the webinar, so if you do have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box, and you'll find that at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to as many as we possibly can as time allows. So let's get going. Let's introduce our fantastic panel of experts that I'm delighted to have with us today, and we'll move to full screen when we stop the slides and begin the discussion. But meanwhile, welcome and thank you so much to our panel for joining us. So let me introduce first of all Sarah Lau, Director of People Services of the Information Commissioner's Office. Sarah has spent 10 years experience in the strategic people space. In her current role is focusing on building digital capability within the regulatory sector, a fellow of the CIPD and a leading expert in EDI. Currently the chair of the UK Regulators D&I Network, Sarah has worked in numerous EDI committee member roles and forms part of the London Mayor's D&I expert panel to develop the Greater London Authority D&I pledges. Also joining us is Stella Power, Chief Operating Officer of DEFRA in the Digital Data and Technology Services Division. A civil servant for 18 years, Stella has worked for DEFRA, DFT and Cabinet Office in delivering organisational transformation programmes and initiatives in both corporate and operational settings. Most recently focused on critical response to both the EU exit and COVID-19, Stella is passionate about employee engagement, inclusion and wellbeing, as well as understanding how technology can both help and hinder in building these into our ways of working. And finally, Craig Scriven, Assistant Director of Organisational Effectiveness and Talent, Birmingham City Council. Craig has spent nearly 20 years working in and around HR and OD, both as a practitioner and as a lecturer for the CIPD. A previous winner of the inaugural CIPD HROD Practitioner of the Year Award, Craig has undertaken leadership roles in both the public and private sectors, and he now leads the Organisational Effectiveness and Talent function at Birmingham City Council, including the ambitious New Ways of Working programme, aimed at revolutionising the how whilst improving the what. So welcome to you all, and thank you so much for joining us. Next slide, please, Annie. So we're going to take a look at the recruitment landscape first and foremost. So first, some findings from the Hayes 2022 UK Salary and Recruiting Trends Report. We carried out the survey late last year. We had more than 23,000 responses from employers and employees from organisations of all sizes and sectors. It will come as no surprise to you that there's a huge demand for talent in public services. There's 80% of employers saying they're planning on hiring this year, and specifically by sector, that's 84% of central government, 80% local government, and 79% of NHS respondees say they are hiring this year. Inevitably, skill shortages are widespread. 87% of employers say they faced difficulty accessing skills over the last year. That's 90% in central government, 87% in NHS, and 84% in local government have all faced significant skills shortages. And beyond that, our spring quarterly update survey found that 73% of public services employers say they don't currently have access to the skills they need. So this brings into sharp focus the need to have an effective candidate attraction and engagement approach and a highly compelling candidate offer and proposition. Next slide, please, Annie. So this shows, according to the Office of National Statistics, the number of live vacancies across the UK as we speak. These are vacancies of all sectors and all role types. And as you can see, pre-pandemic, we had a then record of 860,000 vacancies across the UK. With lockdown in early 2020, activity fell off a cliff. But since then, we've seen this dramatic V-shaped recovery growing quarter on quarter, every quarter, to a record-breaking and massive 1.3 million vacancies here today. I've worked in Hayes in recruitment for 27 years, and I've never seen the likes of this in terms of the scale of attraction, challenges, and demand for talent. Next slide, please, Annie. So using the same source, Where do these vacancies lie by industry and profession? Well, no surprise to learn that health and social care are at the top of the list with more than 200,000 vacancies, followed by professional and technical activities with 136,000. And another one to call out is technology, 69,000. The point being is you have to remember every time you go to market to hire in this space, you're up against thousands of other organizations, all vying for the attention of a potentially small number of target candidates. So you have to ask yourself, what will you do differently to cut through the noise? Thanks, Annie. Next slide. And of course, the net output of this tension between supply and demand is wage inflation. And it's not going to slow down anytime soon with the growing demand for skills combined with the emerging cost of living crisis. So as of December 2021, the whole economy was running at 4.9%. But the key issue is the private sector, with its greater flexibility to respond to market conditions, is running at 5.4% compared to the public sector's 2.5%. So the already pre-existing wage gap is growing, creating further challenges for public services employers. Next slide, please, Annie. And going back to the Hays data, let's look at things from the perspective of employees and candidates. Our survey showed that 53% of employees are considering moving jobs this year. Broken down by sector, we see 65% in central government, 58% in healthcare, and 63% in local government. And the main reason for them wanting to leave their current role is because of salary and benefits packages. So not only do we have an attraction issue, we potentially have a retention issue as well. And it's also interesting to note that for those not planning on changing roles this year, 44% could be tempted to do so for a role with a better salary and benefits package. So given it can be really difficult for public service employers to compete on salary, we have to work very hard around articulating the total package and things like flexible working options and development opportunities and other levers to both attract and retain staff. And currently 35% of public sector employers will let staff choose how often they work from home. But 63% of employees would be tempted to change jobs if an organisation offered this flexibility. And next slide, please, Annie. So while, of course, salary is an absolute key driver, there is cause for hope. We've seen a significant shift in the perception of public services and the importance of social purpose over the last couple of years across all candidate groups. So organisational purpose is now a fundamental element of the decision-making process when it comes to job seeking, alongside flexible working and work-life balance, where public services can be strong, but we have to note the gap has closed with hybrid working post-pandemic and so on. But the takeaway is defining your purpose and the contribution of your roles within that is a vital component part of your employer value proposition, or EVP. And we found that 62% of employees would be prepared to accept a lower paid job for either a better work-life balance, a job with more purpose, or both. Another benefits worth noting that employees want in a job are mental health support and well-being support, such as additional days paid days off, and new well-being tools. And on to the final slide, please, Annie. So to close on the market insights, in summary, we have a multitude of challenges ahead that we as public services recruiters need to successfully navigate. Acute skill scarcity, the growing wage gap, the changing expectations of different sectors of society, defining our EVP, improving how we find and engage talent, broadening our engagement with a wider, more diverse pool of candidates, and so on. So thanks, Annie. If you'd stop sharing, let's turn to our panel, and let's start with the why. So looking at the recruitment landscape, Sarah, let's start with you. Going back to the market landscape, 1.3 million live jobs across the UK, 80% of employers planning on hiring staff this year, 87% experiencing skill shortage. It's never been more difficult to attract talent than today. So for you, Sarah, where are the key skill shortages that you're wrestling with? Why do you think we're in a time of such acute skill scarcity? And when it was already difficult to find that talent, why is it even more difficult post-pandemic?
Really, really good questions, and it's great to see all that information that you put there. So at the ICO, I would definitely say it's technology and innovation. So that's kind of the AI space, economics and cybersecurity. So we're doing a lot of work around this area, and we're working with Ofcom, CMA and FCA, developing the Digital Regulators Committee Forum. And we've done this in response actually to some of the issues that we're facing in regards to talent shortages in this space. We understand it's really difficult at the moment to attract candidates into tech and innovation when you're up against big tech. We can't compete on salary, and sometimes people want to be really close to the action. So just in response to what you said, the why is really, really important. The public sector purpose is really important in drawing candidates in. We know that we've experienced issues with the traditional channels of bringing candidates in. So we have to get a bit more tech savvy on how we recruit, what our campaigns look like. Small pool as well to choose from. So again, just tapping into that a bit earlier through university and potentially schools to sell these particular areas. Cybersecurity is something I think we could possibly sell a bit more and talk about, because it's such an interesting area. And it's an area that's going to, of course, develop as things become digital everywhere. I guess there is a problem in retaining specialist talent in these areas for the ICO. And it's, you know, losing talent after a couple of years to tech companies is something that we have to compete with and consider, and it's part of our workforce planning strategy. So, you know, responding to that and working with the other regulators to respond to that is going to be really important, because it then we're then able to offer something more, which is come and work with the ICO, and then you can move around, work with the FCA, work with CMA, other digital regulators, and kind of grow your experience in that way. Location is something, again, that we have to consider. There's the levelling up agenda and roles coming out of London. So thinking about our regions, where in the UK can we create digital hubs, and where we're looking at Manchester and co-location in Manchester, and working really closely in the north with other regulators to be able to create an offer again that signals that we're creating change in this space. And if there's talent in this area, you don't have to move to London to do well. And I guess there is a pressing need that expands past tech and innovation. So with that, there is always going to be the legal sector, which has to then kind of look at the implications and ramifications of what we do in this space. The pressure then moves, isn't it, to kind of corporate services. So we understand the need for being quite targeted in our workforce plan around these particular areas that we want to grow, but understand that that would spread out as well. We have to take in consideration the whole of the organisation.
Brilliant, thanks, Sarah. Lots of great stuff, and we'll tease some of that out as we go through, I think. So, Stella, let me turn to you as a technology expert, one of the areas that Sarah called out. What are your thoughts on this?
So I think, you know, very similar experiences to what Sarah has described there, and also some of the same responses from an organisation perspective. I guess some of the key skills gaps for us are around data, cloud technologies, AI, and how are we trying to address that? I guess that's through three main ways, really. You know, you've referenced there, Matthew, some of the limitations that we've got around pay and reward, but also some of the fantastic opportunities that there are to work on some incredibly exciting projects, initiatives and innovations in government. So really trying to major on that and increase our articulation and the way we are able to express how exciting those opportunities are. How interesting some of the technologies that you might be involved in developing will be through the course of the opportunities that we are trying to fill, making the connections between those technologies and directly the environmental outcomes that DEFRA is trying to achieve for the UK overall, and making sure that we are really explaining that in a way that is accessible to a diverse range of candidates across the talent pools that we're seeking to tap into. So getting much better at that and spending more time on that as part of our resourcing strategy, and really sort of involving the right people in the conversation, so that when we build that advert and we're thinking about the resourcing strategy that sits behind filling those range of posts, that we're really accessing the right people and explaining to them in language that they understand the actual incredibly exciting and innovative and influential work that they could potentially be involved in. So that's one of the things. I think another thing then is around making sure that we've got the right talent pipelines internally, and focusing more on onboarding and developing talent in-house. And as Sarah said, building into the resource plans, the recognition that we will be providing a springboard for those people to enter potentially more lucrative technology careers later on, having moved on for us, and that building that in to be a part of our strategy and recognizing that's what might happen. And then thirdly, I think, is linking all of these things together with making DEFRA and DDTS in DEFRA in particular a more diverse and inclusive organisation. So actually seeing these resourcing strategies as a means of increasing our inclusivity and diversity, and utilising that as the opportunity that it is to do that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sarah. A lot of interesting stuff. Again, we'll drill down into some of this as we get into it in terms of workforce planning and pipelining and EDIs and accessibility. Great. Thank you. Craig, slightly different perspective, perhaps from the world of local government. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting actually, Matt, and it's really interesting actually listening to Sarah and Stella talking about their specific challenges. Birmingham City Council, we're pretty big council, and we're an organisation of thousands of roles, and we've got challenges really in all areas. So when we talk about sort of skill shortages, everything from school crossing patrol wardens through to senior accountants. Only this morning I was having a conversation with a director about some challenges they're having in some key statutory services where we're really struggling to recruit and retain key posts. And I think that the interesting thing, if I now think about your question about why is it different now compared to pre-pandemic, being very, very simplistic about it, prior to the pandemic, we were competing with probably 32 other local authorities for staff, so 32-ish in and around the West Midlands. We've got quite a big system, so you could end up with people working as social workers in Stoke-on-Trent, moving to Sandwell, moving to Dudley, moving to Birmingham, and moving around a system. And to put that into context, we've gone from sort of 30 local authorities that we were competing with previously to 353 councils now that we're competing with in the country. So, it's massive. It's a massive challenge now that we're competing on a sort of national scale to recruit key statutory posts. And yes, we have challenges in technology, and we have challenges in some of those sort of frontline services, as I've said, and we have challenges right the way through to senior directors in the organisation. And I think part of that is there's much more choice for people now. The organisation, society is much more flexible, more agile. Technology's advanced, and it's normalised, ways of working in a completely different way. And I think separately to that as well, the pandemic really brought into close focus the fact that people are now potentially making more holistic life choices. I know lots and lots of people who have taken steps down or steps sideways or steps out of industry to do something completely different, to do something which is much more akin to their purpose, their own values, and their own beliefs. So yeah, people I think are asking the questions about whether or not they want to work hard in a stressful role when things have been proven to be much more delicately balanced over the last couple of years. So I think there's a range of different circumstances. We're in a bit of a perfect storm, if I'm honest, Matt.
Absolutely, well put. But absolutely, you're right. There's been a tremendous shift in perception around values and purpose in job seekers, without any doubt. And perhaps we'll come back to that as well as we get through. So let's start from the beginning almost, in terms of workforce planning and skills forecasting is one of those utopian ideals that we all seek to achieve and attain, but it's really hard in the day-to-day firefighting of our world to get a grip on that. But I'd like to try and address that and understand what you've done as individuals and within your organisation. So Stella, starting with you, can I ask a question in two parts? What have you done to improve your organisation's approach to workforce planning, to better position yourselves to meet that demand for talent? And then secondly, as you've been able to forecast your skills requirements, how have you implemented this into, for example, early careers and talent pipelining activities?
Okay, so we've been working in a bit of a reactive world through the course of the pandemic, and it was really, really hard, not only to forecast your workforce requirements, but also to carve out the time to forecast your workforce requirements, because it's actually quite a resource-intensive activity in of itself, and requires some strategic thought, some scenario planning, and some, collective brain power to come up with accurate and worthwhile strategic resource plans. However, given that we were looking at, some really specific skills gaps that we had to fill, and recognizing that we needed to embark on some intensive, resource intensive and costly recruitment campaigns in order to fulfill that requirement, we did indeed sort of make some time to do that strategic resource planning at the early part of last year, and those resource plans are just about to be refreshed for the new financial year. But what we were really looking at in there was, how did we want our workforce to be made up? So what proportion of our workforce should be permanent, and what were the right skills that we wanted to build internally versus those that we might only need temporarily or on a short-term basis or more flexibly, that actually we wouldn't pursue through a permanent recruitment route, and we would look for more agile solutions in order to fulfill those resource gaps. So that we were able to really then focus our mind on, okay, what are the core capability sets that we want to build in-house? How do we then create also the support network internally through the management of those professions to ensure that those people coming in are having fulfilling career experience in a wide range of different projects and exciting pieces of work that may have longer or shorter term or immediate outcomes, so that their career experience in that capability centre is diverse, and they are building a wide range of breadth of skills across that capability. And then, also then understanding how we could utilise the temporary resources that we were bringing in to also help build the skills of our core, more permanent community of capabilities as well. So setting out that in those strategic resource plans by functions, by capabilities, and ensuring that we had a robust career pathway associated with those capability centres has been really, really important for us in targeting our efforts around recruitment and making sure that we were investing the right amount of time and energy in the right places, as opposed to, a more scattergun or reactive approach to filling a vacancy each time it pops up, which ends up being a little bit like a game of whack-a-mole, and actually, not building the coherent employee experience of being a member of DDTS that we wanted to create. So we're part way through that journey. I'm not saying we've finished it. We've still got some work that we want to do in terms of building out that capability function, and what comes next. And perhaps we'll go on to talk a little bit more about that in later questions. But that has been our approach to it. And I think, what we've seen by doing that is, I think we had a bit of a narrative internally that, there were these jobs and they were impossible to fill and we'd never get anybody for what we were paying, and, all of that stuff. And I think what taking this more strategic approach has proven is that actually that's not the case. If we can offer up and articulate the right exciting opportunities in a way that we can explain what the career path is for those individuals when they land here in this organisation and the exciting work that they've been involved in, we can attract and retain the right people.
Brilliant, thanks, Sarah. And we'll drill down into how you attract those people shortly, I hope. Craig, how about from your perspective, skills forecasting, talent pipelining?
Yeah, good. It's a really, really tough question, and I appreciate the answer there. That's just been given. Sounds super good. It's interesting from our end because I don't think there's any particular magic bullet. And Matt, when we were talking in the sort of pre-warm up to this a couple of weeks ago, if I had the magic bullets to sort of some of our workforce planning strategies, I wouldn't be doing this job. I'd be doing something far more exciting and far more valuable, I think. However, there are tons and tons and tons of different methods for workforce planning, and one of the key things for us has been about starting right at the beginning and being really clear about what we're actually here to do. So we've sort of taken an approach in HR. We've reconfigured ourselves around people services, and sort of almost gone back to basics, started to think about what we're here to do, and what we're here to do to support the organisation. And when I say that, we're very fortunate that as a corporate leadership team and as an executive team, we're in the process of writing a fantastic new corporate plan for the next 5 years, which will drive the place and impact on the city. 1.25 million people that ultimately it's my job to try and support the people that support those 1.25 million people. And we've got a whole bunch of grand challenges that will come to the party that we then need to address through our people agenda. So we're really fortunate that as part of the corporate leadership team, we're influencing what those grand challenges are, but also then addressing what the key people agenda needs to look like to support the delivery of services for those 1.25 million people. So in essence, we've reviewed our whole operating model. We've looked at how we do workforce planning. There's nothing wrong with how we do workforce planning. It's, you can use a 4-step model, a 5-step model, a 6-step model, a 7-step model. It doesn't really matter what it is. The key thing is getting the diagnosis right and understanding the challenges and what it is that you're actually trying to do. And I think that on the back of years and years and years of cutting and sort of austerity and stuff in the sectors that we're all representing here, we're now seeing the impact of workforce planning where it's not been done, or it's not been done properly, or it's not been afforded the right amount of emphasis. So we're spending a heck of a lot more time now bringing together a new part of people's services, looking at organisational effectiveness and talent, the bit that I'm looking after, to bring together data, insight, analytics, workforce planning, communications, and engagement, performance, feeding into resourcing and talent, which is then influenced by the conversations that we're having through our people partner approach. So we're having a much more strategic view, but also a much more intelligent view of how we can genuinely have an impact on what we do as a city for the place, to make sure that we are sustainable. The interesting bit when we start thinking about early careers and talent pipelining and all that sort of stuff, and how our workforce planning could then have an impact on sort of the long term. We, as the youngest city in the UK, people often don't know that we are the youngest city in the UK and second most diverse. It goes hand in glove that we, our city needs to reflect our workforce, and our workforce needs to reflect our city. So we've got to focus far more on apprenticeships, graduates, industrial placements, traineeships, and development of T-levels. Ultimately, we need to build career paths and be an organisation which is attractive to the brilliant, diverse talent that we've got in the city. And we're working now with key university sectors and partners, and really defining what we're trying to do in the apprenticeship space to enable us to think about those long-term challenges that we've got to face as a city. High levels of deprivation. 42% of our children live in poverty. We've got high levels of unemployment. We've got so much to do, and if we're going to make an impact, we need to think about how our workforce planning strategies impact not only our workforce but the 1.25 million people. I've said that lots of times. 1.25 million people that ultimately we're responsible for making sure that they can thrive in our brilliant place. So I'm not sure whether that's answered the question, Matt, but there's lots of stuff to get stuck into, I think, as we go through the webinar.
Thank you, Craig. I think the key takeaway for me was interesting is asking yourself, what is the problem that we're here to solve, is a great start point. Sarah, anything you'd like to add?
I mean, not really. The main points were touched upon, I think. The fact that we, if you look at workforce planning 3 years ago, it was all about Brexit, and we were really preparing ourselves for a loss potential of workforce around that. And it really is about shifting and flexing and being very, very agile. So your workforce plan, whatever it is, has to be agile and responsive. And I agree, diagnosing what it is that the issue is, where you want to be in the next 5 years, and mapping that out is going to be really important, because you'll find a lot by doing that. Stella mentioned scenario planning. You'll find a lot when you do that, but then be targeted and be really focused. And see where it is that you can make the biggest wins, the achievements, where are the risks in what you're planning. Your methodology and frameworks will gaps, you know, will move potentially, but the civil service and kind of CIPD, plugging them, I guess they have some really good frameworks out there so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel when you start this work. But I guess for the ICO, the research with external stakeholders and businesses was really key. You know, what is it that our external stakeholders are saying? What is it that that we need to respond to now and in the future? What are people worried about in regards to their data privacy? And getting and building that into our workforce plan, ensuring that we're responding to that was crucial. So I would say there's the external kind of factor piece that we have to always consider. And then, of course, just going into your point around early careers and talent pipelining, such a fan of that. I mean, it sets the culture, doesn't it? If you look at your early careers framework and your emphasis is constantly, I guess, on graduates, then the culture that you'll set will be around that. Really think about broadening that out and being diverse as you can. So apprenticeships are fantastic ways of building up early careers, having established career pathways, allowing talent to breathe and grow through the organisation, establishing those. And Stella mentioned, as well as Craig mentioned, the importance of having your workforce plan, setting that out, and then having your career pathway, your professional professions development, working alongside that. So everything comes together in a coherent piece. That's really, really important. So that's kind of the work that we're doing at the ICO as well, along with the DRCF, and investing in that space. So not seeing it as an add-on, because it's going to be crucial that you're not left, I guess, behind the curve, which can sometimes happen when you're reacting. When you're looking at skill shortages, it's really crucial that you invest in workforce planning and that kind of profession to help develop this work. So nothing further to add, really, just to, I guess, report what we're doing in the ICO.
Great, thank you so much, appreciate that. So let's imagine for a moment we've got our skills plan and our forecast and we understand where we're going, which of course, when you've got a considered approach, you are in a far better place to be able to work collaboratively across the organisation to get the right skills that you need, etc. Let's really drill down then into candidate attraction, which of course is the key issue of the day. We've got the wage gap growing fast in terms of private sector versus public sector, and therefore we know we've got these challenges around how we attract talent into public services. So Craig, starting with you, in this massively competitive marketplace where you can't compete on salary alone, what are you doing to improve the profile of your organisation? What tools are you using to attract talent, and how do you try to make sure your voice is heard to stand out from the crowd?
Thanks, Matt. And it's interesting because right now, before this session, I'm currently doing a piece of work reviewing all of our approach to talent management, and specifically our approach to attracting and retaining diverse talent across the organisation. So I know some very specific data points because I've literally been looking at some stuff this morning. So your question is quite interesting for us because you're talking about candidate attraction. We don't have a problem with attracting people. We had 6,436 people apply for jobs in the last 12 months, and we recruited 1,168 of them. So we don't necessarily have a challenge in terms of attraction. We do have challenges in terms of attracting the right kind of people with the right kind of skill set that we're actually looking for. So back to the first question about skill shortages, we can attract people, but I think because we're an organisation which has got a particular reputation, people want to come and work for us, so they'll apply for jobs whether they're matched or not. So part of our challenge is actually how you filter through some of that stuff, and when you found the right candidate, how you flip that candidate who might have been passive or actually active in the market, how you flip that candidate quickly into onboarded. And that's our biggest challenge, really. You know, we've been doing stuff that, and I'm sure that Stella and Sarah will be saying the same things. We're looking at adapting our total reward offer, making sure that we're really clear about what we have to offer in terms of, you know, great pension contributions, good holidays, ability to work flexibly, good development opportunities, all of that kind of stuff that everybody will say is the important thing. But I think for us, what we're really honing in on now is purpose-based careers. You know, you come into local service local government or public service because you understand, or you want to understand and be part of delivering the Nolan principles. You know, making sure that you are doing the right thing for the society in which you're working. So we're very much more talking around purpose-based careers. We have been very fortunate to be able to springboard off of something that's happening at the end of July. I think it's called the Commonwealth Games or something. So that's happening in the city at the end of July, and there's a whole load of collateral around the city and what the city's got to offer. So we're being really helped by that to sort of, if you like, twin track our branding alongside some of the branding that's being used in regards to the Commonwealth Games. So we've been very much more bold about our approach and how we do things. And ultimately, we've always been a place where flexibility is essential. That is one of the benefits of work in public service, and certainly work in local government. We do have a significant amount of flexibility, flexi time, all that kind of stuff is something from the past, but we've always had that flexibility, but now it's playing to our benefit, and we're seeing many more people working in hybrid models, and we expect that to continue. Why would we go back? So we're really selling that as one of our key points. And as I say, we're being really bold in our approach. We've got to flip our pace very quickly. Traditionally, we've been slow. Our processes can be disengaging and very traditional. You fill in an application form, and then that application form gets assessed, and it's all about your additional information as opposed to anything else. And we go through and we check and all that kind of stuff. And it's very linear, not particularly engaging of a wide range of people from our community. So we're looking to see how we can, and we are putting in place very different, much more agile approaches to shortening our timescales, making slicker campaigns, and so far we're seeing some early benefits. As I say, attraction isn't necessarily our problem. It's attracting the right candidates and turning those potential candidates into good quality starts.
Thanks, Craig. So let's drill down into that a little bit in terms of those people, those hirers that are struggling to attract the really difficult to find and attract and engage skills. What can they do differently, and what might you be doing at ICO to do that?
So Craig touched on something actually that we've started to do, which is to look at our tech offer. And what I mean by that is not, I guess, the skill shortage area, but how we're attracting people and where we're attracting them. We're looking at our drop-off rates of application form. We're looking at how we can change our application form, make it more streamlined, accessibility around that. We've just decided as well, pushed to not necessarily look for people's degrees. If you need a degree to get into the role, then brilliant. But if you don't, because you're coming into casework, and we've got some brilliant caseworkers that do have degrees, but you don't necessarily need one to get one in. So to get in, so we're looking at actually the requirements of the role and making that really accessible. But I agree. It's that you mentioned it before, Matthew, that employer value proposition. What's our offer to attract people to us? We can't compete on salary, but we can compete when it comes to pension. We can compete when it comes to health and well-being. Looking at the way and I guess rewarding the way in which you work, your values, the fact that your values would align to ours, that we're private sector and we're all about the purpose. We're all about public service, and trying to make that as exciting as possible in our adverts and the way in which we attract and the areas. So we're looking at currently our corporate voice at the ICO. What does it mean to work for us from an inclusion point of view, but also from the work that we do? And I'll talk a bit more about that later on. I hope we'll get time to dig into that. But from the public sector point of view, we shouldn't pay small mind to the fact that we do emphasise the importance of mental health well-being. It's so crucial in this time, and coming into the public sector, you mentioned flexi time, Craig, being old school, but actually there are a lot of private sector places that don't offer flexible working from day one. As soon as you come into interview, you can request to work the hours you want to work and work completely flexibly and part-time. That's a fantastic way to tap into an untouched market, I guess, of people that maybe have lost confidence to work, but for a number of reasons. So we shouldn't pay like work to that. That's a really, really important feature of being in public sector, and I think we should draw upon that a bit more. And also, I think it's that, you know, we can be known for being potentially archaic in the public sector. I think we can't really get away from that. But there's a reason as to why we do some of that. It's for transparency. It's to ensure that we are accessible. We're being fair. So there's a way in selling that as well, and saying actually there's a reason that we've got some of these processes in place, and it's to protect the welfare, well-being of our people, to ensure that everything we do is fair and transparent. So I would lean a bit more into some of the parts that we can see as negative. I would lean into it a bit more, up the tech offer, be really clear about where you want to target your adverts. You may want to go and advert with and use Stonewall, for example, to increase your demographics around there. But again, be clear about why you're doing that, and make it really make sure that you're doing that for the right reasons. I think really that's probably it. I guess it's the leading into the public sector life is going to be really important in the articulation of the offer.
Brilliant, thanks, Sarah. And Sarah, you touched on this previously around articulating some of the work that you do, the projects, the new initiatives, and the contribution around that. I guess that's really important too.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with everything that Sarah and Craig have said around, you know, total reward package, employee value proposition, you know, purpose-defined jobs is really, really critical to us now. I think, you know, tapping into the current zeitgeist, and in particular making the civil service relatable to, you know, a different profile of candidates than might normally have become interested in a civil service career, is something that we are really trying to, you know, tap into. For example, DDTS and DEFRA, you know, leads on sustainable technology for the whole of government, not just in DDTS. We had a big event at COP26 this year that received quite a lot of publicity via various different social media channels. So how do we, you know, get the message out there that, you know, if you're interested in sustainability, if you're interested particularly in sustainable technologies, and how we can use technology to drive greener outcomes, you know, across the globe, then, you know, the DDTS Endeavour is a place where you can get involved in, you know, projects and a career that will help you to do that. So, you know, how do we, making that that civil service career relatable to, you know, an outcome of global significance that will appeal to a different demographic is crucial for us.
Absolutely, great, thank you. So completely agree. The articulation of all of those things is fundamental to engaging those key people you're trying to draw into the process. So we've talked or we've mentioned a few times equity, diversity, inclusion, social mobility, accessibility, those kind of things. Let's drill down into that if we can for a moment. And Sarah, I'll turn to you first. What initiatives have you implemented recently that have improved your reach and engagement of a more diverse pool of candidates? And outside of attraction activities themselves, have you changed anything around your recruitment process to make your opportunities more accessible?
So a lot is the first thing I would say. What have we done? I guess firstly, I think it's important to start from the beginning in terms of being really clear about your internal corporate narrative on EDI and why it's important. The population of work need to understand and buy into this. And then there's the business case, which we're all, I'm sure, really clear about the importance of it. But that narrative then needs to transcend into your external corporate narrative voice and your response to social events that take place. Impact of your work on the community that you serve. That's really important, getting that narrative right, and talking about, I guess it helps to shape your branding around that. So when it comes to recruitment, it's not just about the talk, actually. You can demonstrate the impact you've had on the communities that you serve through some of that work that you've been doing. So I think your data is going to be really important in targeting that area that you believe you're underrepresented in. Once you've dug down into that data and you've looked at the demographic of your workforce, then I would say be really clear about if you want to have a targeted approach to increase any of those underrepresented groups in your organisation. And what I mean by be clear is have that plan and be really clear in terms of, I'm going to be looking to increase ethnic minority at senior leadership level. So what that means is when I go out to advertise, I'm going to use these channels specifically. I'm going to widen the pool so that there's an equal opportunity of access, because I know that there's underrepresentation in this group. So it's all about the opportunity to access the role. And of course, make sure that the outcome is the best person for the job, but always have that narrative in mind. And that's what we've been doing at the ICO, and it's worked exceptionally well. We've had a really targeted approach. We've looked at where we're underrepresented in terms of disabilities and area, and we've done a lot of work to not just work with our internal employees around the importance of accessibility, so that when people join us, they can be in an environment that they thrive in. There's no point putting all of these initiatives in place and the organisation isn't then ready to support said people. So that you really do have to have both channels working in tandem. So we've done that work in the ICO. We're still continuing to do that work. We've got an EDI board, a NED that's senior NED that's invested in this work. We've got an ET sponsor. So it really is about making that known. And highlighting the importance of it in your work, and that does then translate into your kind of attraction and talent work. So yes, that's kind of what we're doing at the ICO.
Brilliant, thanks so much. Sarah, well, how about Defra?
So I think a lot of similar things to the stuff that Sarah's referenced there. So there's a lot of stuff that we've done at the front end, including deploying different technologies to make sure that we're got access to the right market information, so that we're targeting a diverse set of candidature for the roles that we're advertising across all different parts of the country. The levelling up piece, advertising much more outside of London, and making sure that we're offering roles in all of our hubs, various different locations, offering flexible ways of working, different channels through which people can enter. So that might be apprenticeships, temp to perm arrangements, civil service fast stream. We're developing now, associated with our capability centres, some academies, and we're going to be, looking at, what is the way in which we can populate those academies in a way that, most accurately reflects the diversity of the UK and also helps us build our diversity internally in the organisation. I think as well, though, I think the point that Sarah raised is really important. It's not just about the upfront activities that you do to ensure that your processes are robust enough to take discrimination against protected characteristics out of the equation. And we've done all of the analysis, so that we can see, exactly where that's happening and put in place various stages of in the recruitment process, things to mitigate against the risk of that. It's also so much about the organisation that people walk into, and when they get here, if we've been successful in diversifying our recruitment processes, the organisation that they walk into needs to reflect that. So there's a tremendous amount of work going on in DEFRA and DDHS to ensure that we are, constantly keeping that conversation alive, having the difficult conversations around it, and making sure that, it is a subject that we are constantly focusing on, not just at leadership team level, but throughout the organisation, so that it's becoming part of the conversational DNA in DEFRA. And I'm not saying that that's going to sort of, it's not going to change overnight and become, a problem that is solved. I think we've really got a long way to go, and a lot of listening to do as an organisation before we get there. But, really providing that ear that we can respond back to the feedback of the organisation to take us forward on that journey, I think is one of the important shifts that I've seen occur in this organisation over the last 12 to 18 months, I'd say.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sarah. Craig, forgive me, with an eye on the clock, anything you would add to that around the activity you're undertaking at Birmingham?
I'll sort of keep this fairly tight, Matt, like I say, conscious of time. So we were one of the first councils to publish our race pay gap in 2020, and we pulled together a specific report identifying how we were going to address inequalities within our workforce. And we've been working on that over the last 18 months or so. Luckily, we maintain 90% of our workforce every year, so we need to concentrate on the internal market to make sure that we were retaining the talent that we got. We've been working closely with local universities, colleges, and on reverse mentoring, allyship, development programs for diverse talent to thrive in this stuff. And we've also signed a partnership recently with an organisation called Vacida, which were introduced by Hayes, which has been, hopefully will start to pay some dividends as well, where we can start to champion the work that we do across all protected characteristics, and we'll be addressing over the next 12 months to see the sort of benefit of that. It's early days, but what we're seeing on the back of the work that we commenced sort of 18 months ago was the fact that our gender pay gap was reduced to 3.9%. Our representation from Black, Asian, marginalised ethnic communities has increased by 6%, and our representation again from Black, Asian, minority ethnic communities has increased by 300% since 2019 at direct level. So we're clearly making a difference. Is it at the pace that we need? We could always do more. I think that's the key thing. These things are taking time, but we're starting to see some of the early shoots of hope that we're doing the right stuff.
Fantastic. Thanks, Craig. Appreciate the brevity. I have another question in regards to retention and development, but I want to roll it up also with a question that's come in from one of the attendees, particularly around EDI. So it's kind of a combination of both of those subjects in terms of retention of people from diverse communities and development of career journeys within organisations where, to quote the question, we need people to see a place for themselves in every organisation at all levels to retain them, to see their career journeys through and retain the talent the organisation invests in. So, Sarah, I'm going to start with you. Can I kind of combine the challenge around retaining people from diverse communities and also the general talent retention issue that we face around the competitive marketplace? What are you doing, particularly within DEFRA, to retain the talent that you can attract and develop?
So, sorry, was that to me or to Sarah?
Sorry, to Stella. Sorry, to you. Yes.
Oh, all right. Okay. So I've mentioned some of this already. So we've developed capability centres around the set of core skills that we identified through our strategic workforce plans that we wanted to focus in on and build internally. So then associated with those capability centres, we're also building some academies so that we can route in diverse talent into those areas. Around those capability centres, we've also built career pathways, learning and development portals, heads of profession that can guide and manage members of those capability professions through and support them through their careers. Also, really then looking at opportunities for people to move between capability centres and build the breadth of their DDAT knowledge. So they may not always want to be going, upwards through a career path. They might be wanting to experience diversity of experience within the DDAT world. And even then, I think the other thing that we can really offer here is such the portfolio of programs and change that we're delivering in order to deliver the environmental outcomes that DEFRA is working towards is incredibly diverse. And therefore, we can offer very different experiences on different projects. So, your job is likely to change, quite frequently if you wanted to, over the range of different projects alone that you've got the scope and capacity to work on here. So I think offering, diversity in all directions through the work that we offer is one way that we are able to retain people, because they're developing, learning, constantly being challenged to do something different and learn something new in that way. So that's one part of it. I think the other thing then is really involving people in the sort of business improvement and transformation journey that we're on in DDTS and DEFRA overall. So as an organisation, we're continually looking to evolve and improve. In DDTS in particular, we've been running a business improvement programme and encouraging all of our members in DDTS to play an active part in that. And I think this in one way where, the recent virtual working has really helped us reach out to people in a way that's maybe easier than when we were working in offices, and hold virtual events in which we've been able to sort of pick people's brains and have really sort of interesting but quite informal conversations about individuals' feedback of their experience of working in DDTS, and what we as a leadership team and more broadly as a community of DDAP practitioners in DEFRA should be doing differently to maintain a happy and engaged, productive and robustly challenged workforce that feels it is learning and has had an experience of work that day, that week, that they're really proud and happy to go home and tell their family and friends about. Because I think, for most of us, that's what it's about, that we can walk out of work at the end of the day and say, hey, do you know what? I delivered something really cool today. And it directly impacts that thing you saw on the news, So yeah, I think that's where we're trying to get to.
Sarah, I'm going to come to you next, if I may, as our resident EDI expert, just linking retention of people generally and retention of people from diverse backgrounds. What are you doing in ICO?
A number of things. So the first thing, of course, I'm going to say, look at the data, right? Look at the data. What's your information telling you? And we do that. If you notice there are spikes in any particular areas of your demographic, then you need to dig into that and understand why. If it's representative of the workforce, then you may put it down to attrition and monitor what the comments say. So that's the first thing, is always it's backwards looking, but it gives you insight into possibly some of the areas that you want to touch upon. Is your environment inclusive? We spoke about this before. Are you sure your environment is inclusive? Potentially do an audit. We've done an EDI audit. It just makes it really clear, actually. It sets out the areas and points that you want to develop on. Some of the areas that you may not have seen as being an internal person, you have someone who's external and objectively kind of looking at your work in that lens. So I think that's one of the things that's really important to do. But in terms of retention of people, listening is probably the most important thing. We have networks, and not everybody wants to engage in the network, but we also have staff forums, and we listen to what people have to say. And from listening and responding to that, people feel valued. It goes back to Stella's point. People want to feel valued in the work that they do. The person in the comments mentioned representation, I guess, and seeing that kind of, I guess, maybe people that look like them in each level of the organisation. I mean, that's the reason why we have targeted responses, because we want to ensure that we represent the communities we serve. It's that simple. We're in the public sector and we should be representative. That's not just from a point of principle, but it's for better business outcomes. It brings diversity of thought, and people with different experiences can problem solve better, and it's just proven so widely. So there's so much in developing that work, and in terms of retention, I think if you can see it, if you're listened to, feel valued, and your workplace is inclusive, you've conducted an audit and you understand the areas that you need to improve on, you're open about that. You've looked at your peer progression and you can see how people progress. You've got networks that can engage and listen to the voice of people. They can input into consultation, then that's fantastic.
Fantastic, thank you. Inevitably, we run out of time. Such a huge subject to cover so many things. I'm going to ask you to leave with one further comment, a sentence each. And Annie, if you wouldn't mind just displaying where people can go to get further information about all of these issues, I'd be very grateful. So Craig, in a sentence, what's the single most important thing that organisations can change that's relatively easy to achieve to improve their talent attraction?
Don't let macro data mask micro issues.
Okay, thank you. Stella?
I think explain the relevance to the role of your advertising to the individual more broadly. Allow them to make the connections between what they're being asked to do and their experience of work, life, family, and everything.
Put yourselves in the shoes of the recipient, the candidate. Absolutely. Sarah?
Very similar. I think it would be lean into your public sector purpose, but why is going to be really important, and work hard to articulate that.
Fantastic. Can I say thank you on behalf of everyone that's attended? Thank you so much for attending, for your insights, expertise and thoughts. It's been brilliant. And there are many questions that we've not been able to address. We'll try and address them separately offline if you possibly can. Meanwhile, lots more information is available on the Hayes.co.uk salary guide and insights. So please, by all means, visit that. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining.